Children as young as 13 groomed by County Lines gangs arrested for drug dealing in London. Exclusive. Scotland Yard are arresting an average of 14 under 18s a week for drug dealing offences. The scourge of London's County Lines operation has been laid bare as figures obtained by the Standard reveal that children as young as 13 have been arrested by police for dealing drugs. Metropolitan Police officers are detaining an average of 14 under 18s a week in the capital for supplying or intending to supply illegal substances. Urban crime networks have been blamed for coercing youngsters in deprived communities to sell drugs on the city's streets, as well as in neighboring counties. Teenagers were found with Class A drugs including heroin, ecstasy, and cocaine, as well as Class B substances such as cannabis, ketamine, and amphetamines. The Standard contacted 44 police forces in England and Wales as part of its investigation. In total, 37 responded to Freedom of Information requests. London accounted for nearly a quarter of children arrested for possession with intent to supply and/or drug supply offences between 2022 and 2024, at 2,185. Greater Manchester had the second most arrests, at 618. Of those arrested in the capital aged 17 or younger at the time of the alleged offences, 43 were aged 13, 132 aged 14, 364 aged 165, 675 aged 16, and 970 aged 17. A 13-year-old was also arrested for possession with intent to supply cannabis, which the London Drugs Commission, commissioned by Mayor Sadiq Khan and chaired by fellow former Labour Minister Lord Falconer, recommended removing from the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, was discovered in most number of cases, 974. Followed by crack cocaine, 388, heroin, 362, and cocaine, 286. Alex Stevens, a professor in criminology at the University of Sheffield and a former member of the Home Office's Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs, warned that cuts to youth services, such as Sure Start centres, have lured youngsters into drug-related crime. He added, "It is not surprising that the people involved are primarily young. But there is another dynamic in play. Prohibition pushes adult offenders to push children into drug offenses. Adult drug dealers are exploiting vulnerable children." David Shipley, a former prisoner who now specializes in researching the prison system, said County Lines gangs are offering children money and gifting them goods, such as designer clothes in exchange for their help, yet are also playing on their psychological fears. "We need to treat children as victims." David Shipley. "You create an environment where this trade carries you," he said. "There is a lot of typical grooming behavior. These kids feel isolated, lonely, lack identity. The people who runs these gang are manipulators and corruptors. Children aren't the key figures. They are right at the bottom. They are being coerced and manipulated. We need to treat them as victims." A Met spokesman said, "The sale and supply of drugs is a key driver of serious crime across our communities. It underpins violent gang activity and contributes to the exploitation of vulnerable young people through County Lines. We are improving the way we protect children and bring those who would exploit or abuse them to justice by increasing the number of officers trained in identifying child exploitation and increase the number of referrals to specialist teams." Last month, the Met shut down more than 100 drug lines in a week-long crackdown as part of its efforts to reduce the number of people exposed to criminality and abuse. As well as this, 260 vulnerable or young people were engaged with and safeguarded to prevent their involvement in future organized crime. County Lines gangs are organized criminal networks that exploit children to transport and sell drugs across regional boundaries. These gangs skillfully recruit vulnerable youths, some as young as 12 or 13, by targeting those from disadvantaged backgrounds, care systems, or with special needs such as learning difficulties. Wikipedia +15 Culturalism, +15 The Independent +15. Once recruited, frequently through social media platforms or community contacts, children are coerced into doing the gang's bidding. They are assigned to travel out of town via trains or other transport, carrying Class A drugs to distribute in areas far from their homes. Frequently, the gang will seize a vulnerable person's home, cuckooing, to use as a base or trap house from which these drug operations are conducted. Justice in motion. These youths assume considerable risk. They may be armed, ostensibly for protection, but in truth, carrying a weapon dramatically increases their risk of harm. Justice in motion culturalism. The environment they're drawn into often involves violent threats, abuse, and criminal accountability. In many cases, these children themselves are treated as criminals, despite being exploited victims. The Sun +15 Vice +15, and SBCC Learning +15. Recent data underscores the scope of the crisis. Around 14,500 children were identified in 2023 to 2024 as at risk of or involved in child criminal exploitation via county lines. Though experts believe this figure is significantly underreported. Culturalism +14, The Guardian +14 Gov. UK +14. London remains a central hub of this activity, with one report indicating London alone accounted for 219 arrests of minors for drug offences in 2024. Some as young as 11 years old, the highest region-wide total in England and Wales. The Sun +1. Recognizing the severity, the government in February 2025 passed new legislation in England and Wales criminalizing the use of children in county lines, imposing up to 10 years in prison for exploitive adults. Additionally, child criminal exploitation prevention orders were introduced to limit contact with children, access to certain areas, and to restrict involvement with vulnerable individuals. Offenders involved in cuckooing now face up to 5 years in prison. The Guardian. In summary, the grooming of children into county lines drug dealing is a form of child exploitation and modern slavery, involving manipulation, coercion, and danger. Although legislative and enforcement measures are being strengthened, including substantial sentences for offenders, this remains an urgent social crisis, demanding continued attention to prevention, protection, and support for vulnerable youth.